In this video, I will show you how to edit your scanogram into your final image, into something that looks like this, possibly, if that's the look you're going for. I'm just going to minimize these really quickly so they're sort of out of the way here. Okay, so in the previous video, you should have seen me demonstrate how to use the scanners to scan three-dimensional objects. So this is the image that I created this afternoon on the scanner, okay, and it needs some work, right? First of all, composition's not that great, but you know, just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is hit Command J and duplicate my background layer, okay? Now, in this image, I'm going to click on my little magnifying glass, and I can click here and zoom in on some areas. There's some dust, probably from the acetate, that comes up in the image, and we're going to try and get rid of that as best we can. Okay, so first I want you guys to look at your images. Are there any major imperfections? Okay, so that's why it's really important to make sure your acetate and glass on the scanner bed is clean and dust free, because it does show up in your image. Okay, so I'm going to hit Command 0 and that will bring my image out to full screen. Okay, and I am going to make some adjustments first. So you can start with the brightness, contrast, or we can go right to levels. It's up to you. And just let's brighten up our image a little bit so we can see some of our objects a little bit better. Maybe increase contrast. Okay, and then maybe I'll add a levels adjustment as well. Make my blacks a little bit richer. And see, already that starts to help clean up this area a little bit. Okay, now there you can really see. Oh look, there's my fingerprints. Okay. So I'm not really happy with how this came out, this object. So we can play with that a little bit. All right, I'm gonna just leave it here, I think. Okay, so I'll close that out. So a couple things you can do as far as cleaning up this image. You can go to Filter and go to Noise and go to Dust and Scratches, and this will help. Let's go over here where it's like really, that's a good spot. Okay. So if you change these, you're going to start to see the dust and scratches will start to get sort of blurred out. But you want to make sure that you're not going too far, because then your whole image will be dusty. I mean, blurry. So maybe like 3 will help. And you can play with threshold, but I'm just going to leave it like here. Okay. And then another thing that you can use is the spot healing brush. So that's this guy over here. It kind of looks like a band-aid. So if you click and hold on this brush, you'll get some other correction options here. Patch tool works well for this as well, but I'm going to leave it on spot healing. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to hit Command plus on my keyboard to zoom in. And so for like big blobs of dust, you can actually just draw over them and those areas will disappear. So this can be tedious. So we're just going to have to really make sure that the scanner bed and the acetate is nice and clean. I just grabbed a piece of acetate from the beginning of the roll, so it was obviously very dusty because it was on the outside of the roll. But the spot healing brush tool works really well. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see exactly. Let me see. Okay, so here's all these little dust scratches. So if you just draw over the dust, it will literally just get rid of them. So it's a pretty cool tool. Okay, and you can also use the clone stamp tool, which actually stamps pixels. So you hit the Alt button and you'll see the icon, Alt or Option key. You'll see the brush change. So this is like the target area. So if I press Alt or Option and then click, what it's going to do is stamp those pixels down. It'll be easier actually if I show you. Let's see here. I'll make the brush big. So if I click Alt and pick up this detail from the starfish, it will literally just stamp those pixels right there. Okay, so it's a pretty cool thing. Okay, anyway, so once you have done some cleanup of your image, I'll go back to my spot healing brush tool. You can start to play around with how you're going to make this image look really, really cool. Okay, so a couple things that you can do. So if I'm happy now with my levels and brightness contrast, I can go ahead and add some additional adjustments. So I could turn my image black and white. You can play around with the different filters, of course. You could also, while you're doing the black and white, you can also tint your image. So you can give it like a warm tone, like that's sort of like a sepia tone. You can change it to really anything that you want. Anything looks cool with your image. So that's one thing you can do. Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay, you can also play with color balance or hue and saturation if you want to. So color balance will take away any tones that you don't like or exaggerate tones that you do like. So let's say you want it to sort of have like a purplish tone to it. So you can drag the sliders over towards the colors that make purples. You can also do some crazy things to the hue where you totally change things around, or leave the color where it is and just increase saturation, which will make the colors that you do have just brighter. Okay, and that actually looks kind of cool for that thing. But okay, so real quick while I'm doing that, actually, because I do like what that did here, I'm going to add a new hue saturation. I'm going to increase the saturation. I'm only looking at this right now. I don't care what happens to the rest of the image at the moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is a mask here. So I'm going to fill in the mask with black. Okay, so white here will reveal this adjustment. Okay, but what I'm going to do is make the whole thing black so it hides this adjustment, but then I'm going to color in certain areas white to reveal parts of it. Okay, so I'm going to take, actually I'll just hit Command I and inverse it. So now it's like that adjustment layer doesn't exist because I made the whole thing black. So now I'm going to click on my brush tool. I'm going to click on a basic round brush, and it has a hard edge. Perfect. And I'm going to hit X on my keyboard, or I'm going to click on this little arrow to switch my background and foreground colors. I'm going to switch to white. And then I'm going to fill in this area And see in this little thumbnail here, you can see what I'm filling in white. So that's revealing the layer below. So if you want to make some adjustments on certain areas, you can do that with a mask. Okay. And then maybe I'll do it here too, because I liked how this looked sort of a little bit more rainbowy. And you do want to be careful. You want to kind of keep your edges nice and neat. Okay. Maybe just right there to make that pop out a little bit more. Okay, but then it doesn't do too much to the rest of my images. Okay. So if I turn that mask off, okay, you can see the whole thing looks like, and then if I turn the mask back on, you can see that it's only affecting the layer it's attached to. Okay, so Command D to deselect. Okay, and I can do the same thing with like my black and white adjustment layer. So let's go back here. I'm going to not tint my image so you guys can see. So if I do the same thing and hit Command I, it's like that adjustment doesn't exist because it's revealing everything below but hiding what it's attached to. So whatever I fill in white will reveal the layers below, or reveal the layers attached to. Actually, this one I'm going to keep white, and then with black, I can fill in just certain areas just to reveal certain parts of color. Okay, so that's a basic intro to masking and some basic non-destructive edits to your image. Okay, so this one you can get creative, but don't keep adding a million layers, adjustment layers. Like if you want to do black and white, you just need one. If you need to make changes, you just double click on the layer thumbnail here and you can tweak anything you want to. Okay. Oops. So make sure that as you're working, you click File, Save As, and save this as a PSD file so that you can save all your layers and go back and make changes as you see fit. Okay, so I'm going to record a separate video talking about, actually I kind of already did this. Okay, yes, I'm going to record a second video and I'll show you some other things that you can do. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to show you how to create a duotone image, which could be really interesting. So it is a destructive edit. You need to have a grayscale image first, which will end up flattening your image and removing all of the color information. So in order to do that, we're going to make a new document just in case you want to go back. Okay, so you're going to hit the Shift key and select all three layers, Command J to duplicate, Command E to merge. And then I'm going to hit Command A on my keyboard to select all, Command C to copy. And then I'm going to hit File, New. And by default, it'll fill in the dimensions of your what you just copied. So just hit Create and then Command V to paste. So first thing you need to do is go to Image, Mode, Grayscale. And it's going to ask you this question and just hit yes, flatten, and discard color information. And then you're going to go back to image again, go to mode, and now duotone is something that you can select. Okay, so you could select colors that are already here. It's up to you. And you can try these other options like monotone. Would basically create an image that's kind of similar to our the sun photograms that we made outside, and that could be a cool look. Maybe you like that. Okay, you could do duotone with another color. Okay, you could do a third color if you wanted to, you know, and play around with that. Now the only thing you have to do is make sure that you name these colors. I actually don't like this one. So I'm going to go back to the, oops, duotone, and I kind of liked that pinky color there. So I'll call that okay. And then you can hit OK. And you can always go back to image mode duotone, and you can make any like fine adjustments. Like maybe you want that to be like a lighter pink as you start working on it, and you know, change things around. Maybe you want that a darker blue. Okay, totally up to you. And then just hit OK. And actually, while I'm at it, this menu changed. So when you click here, this is probably what yours will look like by default. So you can just drag this around and pick the color that you like, or you can click on color libraries, and this will take you to like the Pantone colors if you want to play around with those. But see, if you click on these, they have names automatically, so you don't have to think of a name for it. Okay, so that is duotone. Now you won't be able to do any of these adjustments. However, you can play with levels further if you wanted to. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of that. So you can do sort of similar to what we did before with the reverse image. So you can go to image, canvas size. Oops. I don't know what that's all about. Okay, you know what, my image is pretty big, so I'm actually going to go to crop this, and I'll do doop 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 10 by 14 by 300 and accept those changes. Oops, sorry. Okay, and then I'm going to go to image, canvas size. I'll do it this way. And then I'm going to make my width double. Okay. Okay, so actually I messed that up. Sorry, hold on. Ready? Undo canvas size. Let's duplicate that layer. And when I go to image, canvas size, canvas extension color, it should just be white. And then we'll do 20. And there we go. Okay. So now I can hit Command J again on this layer, and then edit, transform, flip horizontal, move tool, and here we go. And now we have that symmetrical image, and I can hit invert and clip it to that bottom layer. And then you have something that looks like this. Okay. And then you could decide to do some cool things here. So I'm going to hit Command J and then Command E to merge. I'll turn those off. Okay, so here, what I can do is add a blank layer. And I could use a paintbrush tool and select like a contrasting color. And I could go ahead and color. That's not the color I want. Oh. Nope, sorry. Doing this all backwards. So I'm going to hit Command A, Command C, File New, Command, oops, Create, Command V. So here, now it's black and white, but mode, we're going to change this to RGB. And now you could go in, create a new layer, and color in. This is really sloppy. I am doing this on a laptop with those silly little finger things. Okay. So let's say I did a good job doing that. And I can change the opacity of that. Or, better yet, You can change the blend mode to overlay or to, let's see, what is lighten's probably, nope, not gonna work. Darken or multiply. Multiply looks good. Okay, so you could hand color certain things, and this is good because this part of the image is black, so it doesn't matter, you know, if you're a little bit sloppy. And then you could choose to maybe do like the complement of this yellowy color and do like a purple for this starfish. Here you'd have to be a little bit more careful, but you know, you get the idea. And then maybe that's not going to work for this one, so I can make a new layer and fill that starfish in. And then maybe this one would be better as one of the other ones. Lighten. Okay, blends in better with the white background. Okay, so play around and figure out what works for you, but those are some different things that you can do as you're playing around. So the duotone, you can also play with blend modes to create a composite image, which I will show you in the next clip. So if you're working with the duotone image and you want to add some different hand-colored areas or add objects that are transparent over that, you can go to image mode and click back onto RGB color and then click don't merge. And then I'll maintain your color information, but now you can add in other images. So I have this scanned butterfly here. Okay, so here we're going to talk about selection tools. It's these guys over here. Okay, you have a marquee selection, which is just a rectangle, an ellipse, or a single row or column. And these work the same as the shape tools, where if you hold the shift key, you can get a perfect square, perfect circle. Then there's the lasso tool here underneath. And if you click and hold, you'll get lasso, the polygon, and the magnetic lasso. The lasso tool works where you can just kind of draw any shape, and that's your selection. So these are called marching ants, and that'll show you what's selected. Hit Command D to deselect. Below it is your magic wand and your quick selection tool. So these ones will be really easy for you guys to use because it's kind of a complicated process. So just to get your feet wet with this, quick selection will automatically detect edges. So you want to select a brush size that's kind of small. So Photoshop will be a little bit more selective or picky with what it's selecting. And Magic Wand would work really well if you had like areas that are contrasting, like if your object was really light against a really black background, then it would work really well. But this image has some black areas in it, so it's not going to work. But basically, if I click in the black area, it'll select all pixels that are black. Okay, and that doesn't really help me with my butterfly because parts of the butterfly are black. All right, so I'm going to click on the quick selection tool, Command D to deselect. So I'm going to start inside the butterfly and just kind of, I'm not going to go all the way to the edge, but close enough to the edge to get all those pixels. And there's all different ways to select things, but if you know you want to do this, then it would make sense to scan whatever object that you plan to do this with on a contrasting background. So you could actually just use the magic wand tool, which is really easy. So even though this is like black on black, Photoshop is still able to detect the edges in the pixels here and give me a pretty decent selection. And I used a very small brush so that it allowed me to get the detail that I want in my selection. Okay, and then up here in your options bar, you have things where add to selection is selected. So I don't have to worry about like if I click here that my selection is going to go away. So that's always a good default to have. And then minus from selection. So if I want to go over here and like smooth some stuff out, I can do that. So it'll minus from selection. Oh, I forgot this whole chunk here. Oops. Click back on plus, add to selection. Okay. So I don't have the antenna, but that's okay. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit Command C to copy and then Command V and paste it in here. And now it's pretty small. So I can go to Edit, Transform, Scale. And I can make that bigger. So I'm going to make sure I hold the Shift key down so that it stays proportional. Okay, if I just went to Edit, Transform, Scale and did not hold the Shift key down, I could get a tall, skinny butterfly or a short, fat one by mistake. Okay, so you want to make sure you hold Shift. Okay, and I can go back to my Move tool and I can move this where I want it. Maybe I want it sort of overlapping over here. Then I lose the flowers. Maybe I want to go to Edit, Transform, Rotate, and I can put it on an angle. Okay, you know, and that'll sort of unify both pieces. Okay, and then you're going to commit the changes by clicking on that check mark or the Enter key. And now I can go over here too to the blend modes and play around with some different things and see what that does. That gives it sort of a really ghosty looking appearance. You know, so play around and figure out what you think looks the coolest. Okay. Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to try that one. All right, and like if you move this over, it'll do different things. So maybe I like how that looks, you know, sort of this half and half butterfly. Okay. So if you plan to incorporate additional images, every time you do it, make sure your objects are all in different layers. Play around with the blend modes, and these all do different things. There's no, you know, hard and fast rule on what's going to definitely work for your image. You can also play with opacity if you want it to be a little bit more subtle. Okay, but you guys can see here, this image, the leaves in the background, the small flowers, and the butterfly were all three separate images that I ended up combining into one image. So let's look at how that worked. So here's the first layer, then the flowers went on top. Now notice the flowers they still have their black background, okay, but the blend mode was lightened. Okay, and like I said, the blend modes will do different things. So maybe you think that looks cooler. You know, I think I like to lighten. Okay, so, and then I changed it to black and white, but added that tint to create that sort of color that would match the butterfly for some unity. And then I added the butterfly as well. And actually what I did here was I used a mask. So I showed you that in a previous video. So let's just disable the mask for a second. So the butterfly is there, okay? The whole background, let me turn these off so you could see. The whole background is there, but first I changed the opacity to 66%, and you can play around with that for your image. But what I did was I clicked on this little rectangle with the circle in the middle, and that is add a new layer mask. I don't need that other one. Delete, sorry. Okay, so you click here to add a new layer mask, and then you fill in black whatever you don't want to show from that layer. So here, you know what I'll do is I will delete this. Okay, so if I didn't have that, you'd have this black rectangle in the background, and that's not a good look. So I'm going to add the new layer mask, okay? And like I said, I'm going to use black and fill in, just sort of color in around the butterfly all of the black that I want to go away. And you can also use your selection tool here. Oops. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And then that way, when you start to fill in your black, the selection tool won't let you color over the areas that are not selected. So that works out pretty well. So I know I'm giving you guys a ton of information and a ton of different techniques, and you're going to have to figure out what works best for your image. But with Photoshop, the possibilities are truly endless. And, you know, if you feel what I've shown you in these videos is not going to work for your image, then, you know, let's talk about what you want yours to look like and how we can make that happen. Okay, so just to review, you have your image, the original image when you scan it. Okay, you can fix it by using the spot healing brush tool or the clone stamp tool if there's big dust blobs. Okay, you can also select your black areas and, you know, fill in some of those areas with black if you want it really, really solid. But if you're going to play with color and all of that, you don't really need to worry about it being solid black. Okay. And then we'll do our basic adjustments, non-destructive editing and all of that. You can crop, you can do really any size that you want. You could do one of these pre-installed ratios. It's up to you. You can also, when you're on the crop tool, it will show you the rule of thirds. So you could like line up, you know, your most important objects on those lines. But you want to think of an interesting crop. Okay, if you're planning to flip it, how are you going to make that work? So then you can add your adjustment layers. You can add your black and white adjustment. You can use a mask, that's this thumbnail here, and fill in certain areas that you want revealed. So if you fill in with the black brush here, you could reveal certain colors. You can also play with hue and saturation color balance and see what that does for your image. You can change the mode to grayscale. And then go to image mode, duotone, and get some cool looks that way. Let me undo. You can also add additional images, creating a composite, playing with blend modes, using a mask to hide or reveal certain parts of a layer. You can also play with opacity or the blend modes. And your transform tools, edit, transform, so that you can rotate things or flip them. Really, you should be just doing scale and rotate and flipping horizontally or vertically. The skew, distort, perspective are going to do weird, funky things that we don't really want to happen for this particular project. Okay, so that should do it. I know these videos show you a lot, but it should give you some tools for you to be really, really creative with this. Okay, so have fun with this, and hopefully you brought in some really cool objects to scan. Thanks for watching.